And I'm Anastasio Dalde. A lot of people call me Tosh. You can call me Tosh. And I teach physics. I've been teaching at Myron B, I think going on 5 years now. Before that, I was working with the Upper Bound programs. I was working with Nanakuli, Waianae, Lelehua High School. And I was teaching their calculus and physics and whatnot. And I even taught a year at Leeward Community College, doing their engineering program for them. And then I got jump straight into the online teaching, and I think it's a really exciting place for me to be. So I teach the physics and the 8th grade science, and in the previous years they've had me doing chemistry and all the different kinds of sciences, and they even had me go all the way to 6th grade and teach the 6th grade program for them. So I've been around in this school a little bit. Um, and like she said, the Myron B. Thompson Academy, that's where we're from. We're an online school, or at least that's what a lot of people say, and we're a charter school, so we're still public DOE school. But we're not purely online, or at least the high school side is online. But the elementary side is kind of this hybrid, face-to-face online kind of deal. So hopefully we can give you techniques on elementary school side and whatnot, and we'll also kind of speak to the high school people as well. So just kind of an introduction, we kind of gave you the background of who we were, and we're coming from a traditional teaching side. And I'm sure that a lot of the people who are here are face-to-face teachers, or what we call traditional teachers, where you're in a classroom talking to people. And so we were thinking, well, what we figured would be a great presentation would be, we're coming from a traditional side. We went over to an online side, and when we did that, there was a whole bunch of challenges we had to face. Like, even though I think I'm teaching this student online, this student was on Facebook when I saw that. So um, there's all of these different kinds of ways that we had to learn how to interact with our students. And then when we go back to teaching, face to face in a traditional classroom, maybe during summer school or whatnot, there's all these tools that I've learned from having to address some of these challenges, to becoming an online teacher, that really helped me out in my face-to-face teaching. And so that's the things that we want to give to you today. Um, we, I think that I wanted to start off with, I really liked what the keynote speaker um, said this morning, where she was talking about, what did she say? She said, relationships are important, but relationships aren't enough. You must have rigor and relevance, and the work must be meaningful. So I think that even though we're going to show you tools and cool things to use with online tools, um, they're just tools. You need to start off with rigorous curriculum, and then use these tools to add on. So that's kind of where we're at. Um, the challenges that I've faced, I think one of my biggest challenges is when it comes to technology, I'm somewhat of a dog who chases cars. There's like this new thing and I'll go this way, and new thing I'll go this way, and I'm kind of like this tech junkie who likes to take a whole bunch of things in. And I really get burned by my curriculum advisor a lot, because she asks me, well, what's relevant? What is actually, what is just for fun, and what is it that you're actually using in the classroom? And so that's kind of one of the things for me, is weeding out those, which ones I should use.
So my challenge is that one of the things is that I'm not from Hawaii. The Army brought me here. So last year was our first time here in Hawaii. And so I got to teach online. So if you just walked in, I've been teaching at a regular school, like, face to face, for so many years already. So being thrown into an online environment, it was a real challenge, because there wasn't, when you think online, you think, oh, okay, just online. You can do so many, you could use the computer, so many technology, internet, you could think of all this stuff. But once you're on the online environment, you're kind of stuck, because you're thinking, what am I going to do to deliver the content and actually uh, determine if your student is actually learning, and not just sitting in front of the computer and just walking away from the computer and making you think that, oh, that student is learning. So that was the challenge. So baby steps, right? I learned a lot. I got a complaint last school year, telling me that my curriculum was too hard for 7th graders. So, fix that. And then my other challenge was time management, because I don't have a lot of time, because I Okay, so we're going to be talking about three major things. The challenges. One was the assessment. How do we know the students are learning? Just mentioned that. How do we engage our students? You know, making sure that they are actually learning something and not just, again, sitting in front of the computer, walking away from the computer, making you think that they're in class. Um, just because we're science teachers, and one of the challenges of being a science teacher online is, laboratories. How can we do labs when the students are at home? We can't ask them to come on campus because some of our kids are in another island. So how can we, engage them in some meaningful laboratories? Okay, so those are some of the challenges. And of course, our labs have to be kitchen labs, meaning whatever materials we have, it should come from the kitchen, such as like, your teaspoons, your cooking ware, whatever you can find at your house. And then our teaching strategies, of course, what can we use to deliver the content?
Your philosophy.
Oh, forgot my philosophy. So again, Pamphlet, I come from a regular traditional teacher. So my philosophy right currently at the moment is if I can teach it online, or if I can teach it on face to face where I'm seeing the kids, then I'm going to use that technique and try to teach it online. So for example, if I can do labs face to face, then I'm going to try to do labs online.
And then my philosophy kind of, we were talking about this morning, and that's her philosophy, and mine's used to be that way. I'm so comfortable with teaching face to face with a chalkboard. Um, and so I was thinking, okay, well, I'm an online teacher. I can do all of these things online and make it just like my face to face class. But I think over the years, I've kind of come to think very differently and say that, well, my philosophy is teaching online and teaching face to face is just different. It's a different animal. There's tools that you can use across, but I don't want to try to just emulate this face to face environment because there's some things I can do that are better, but then there's also some things I can't do in the face to face environment. But what I can do is I can use these different techniques and I can approach it differently, and it engages the students in a kind of a different mindset. So I'm not trying to always take this online thing and make it more like a face-to-face class. So that's my philosophy. Um, we're going to talk, I'm going to do a lot of, we're going to show you a lot of resources and whatnot, but I figured that I'd just give it to you right up front. Here's our resources. If you want to take a picture of it now, you can. If not, then you can take a picture of it later, or I can even give you a little card that has the QR code. This has everything we're going to be presenting on. So you don't need to take notes right now or you don't need to frantically be looking down and trying to copy down everything we say. I'd like for this to be somewhat of an interactive workshop so that everything's here for you. I have our Edmodo code, I have Ms. Agbanlog's email address, my email address, and the QR code will get you to all these resources that you would want to use and you can present to your colleagues and whatnot. And then also the last thing is that if you walked into the wrong session after you found out what we're talking about, you can go if you want. I won't feel bad, but I'm happy that you're here.
So the first thing we're going to talk about is assessment and evaluation. So for me, the way I assess my students is, so we're online, right? And most of the time, you don't have an idea of what your student looks like. At least me, I don't know what my kids look like. Okay, sometimes Hawaiian names, I mistaken a Hawaiian name for maybe a female name or a male name. That happened to me last year, by the way. Mistaken a boy
You're probably familiar with Blackboard. Have you seen that before? It's the same thing. It's just Cisco's version.
So what I do is that I actually have a WebEx one-to-one with a student, and I ask them questions. One question, and that one question, can tell me if that student has actually stayed, has actually read the content, has attended class, and really attended class. Because I discovered that I have a few students that would attend our WebEx class, and they won't even listen. Because at the end of the verbal testing, you ask them, did you really stay for class? And they'll tell you straight up, no, I really didn't. I just walked away from the computer so that you know that I was present. So with verbal testing, you can actually tell who knows it, who doesn't know it, and who's just really not doing anything for class. And it's very, very simple procedure. WebEx meeting, I use Google Docs a lot, and I try to use whatever software is found in the student's computer. I try not to steer them towards like downloading other programs from the internet. So whatever the school provides on their computer, I try to use what's on there. So Microsoft Paint is one of my favorite ones, and the students that have like the MacBooks, then I gear them towards like an online whiteboard. And on WebEx, during verbal testing, I can see exactly what they're doing on their desktop. Another thing, I think this is the only program that I've asked the students to download. It's a Jing program. You actually can screen capture, video capture, and what I have students do is that for a math assignment, instead of doing or typing out their answers on paper and submitting them, I actually ask them to do a Jing video demonstrating how to solve a math problem. So then this particular student actually explained how she solved it. So you just give one problem and then you tell them, explain this. And then if they're able to explain it, then you know that, oh, they were listening in class and they actually learned something.
You
So
want me to play the
we're going
video?
to play a
What's the domain? Well, the domain is the x value, or the first number in the ordered pair. Then she said, what's the range? Then again I asked, what is a range? And so I found the y value, or the second number in an ordered pair, is the range. It's part of the range.
So this is an example of a student's work. So that was just one problem. It was a Jing video. She explained it, and because she was able to explain it, I knew that she understood the content and she could move on.
So I'm going to talk about how I address assessment. One of my favorite ones is this physics war. As a physics nerd, this is kind of what I get into. Um, a lot of people think of online as like just these tests, these multiple choice test questions that you just give, and then the computer auto grades it and whatnot, like Khan Academy and that kind of stuff. I kind of shy away from that. I like doing real dynamic assessments. And so what I did was for my physics students, we actually were running this week with my physics class, and we set up this giant table, maybe about, I don't know, 8 feet by 4 feet, 8 feet by about 6 feet. Uh, and we put little green army men all over the place. And I have two cannons set up on either side, and then I've taught them the physics of how to calculate where exactly those cannonballs will land. And so their assessment is I'll give them the coordinates of each army, and they'll be able to fire and hit, and they'll have a war. And so I'll split my class into two sides, and each person gets a cannon, and you go back and forth, and we'll see who destroys the other team. It's a really exciting thing, and it works really well. I've run it for about 5 years now, and it works really well in a face-to-face environment. But my challenge was, how do I get the students who are on the Big Island or Kauai to really be engaged in this as well? Because I can take the students on Oahu and invite them in and come and man a cannon. But what do I do for those online? So what I decided to do was I took like 8 uh, webcams, these little things over here, and I put them all throughout the table. And then what they can do is, now they're in their WebEx classroom, they can actually see which cameras they want to go and launch from. And then they take down all the data, and then they look at all the different angles using kind of like a security guy, right? You're kind of sitting back and watching all of these monitors, and then you can choose which one you fire, and then the cannon will fire. And I can have my students on the Big Island participate in a war against the students on Oahu, and going back and forth. So it's actually really fun. So we take like that cannon, and we're gonna fire at that army. And I was gonna do a live WebEx with the school and actually show you what it looks like. But what I think I'm gonna do, or what I decided to do, was less moving parts. I just kind of took a video of what it would look like. So this is what our classroom looks like. And so you can go in and you can look at all the different cameras that are down here, and you can see the different views. So here's one camera view, here's another camera view. I only set up 4 for this little demonstration. There it is, and see there's me right there. And then you can take a look at the close-up view, which is a camera placed right about here. And then you can tell the computer fire. Fire, there's a little lag, and it's gonna hit now. There we go, and we destroyed that army. So it's actually really exciting for these students who are on Big Island trying to, you know, um, participate with the class and really engage in them. So one of the big problems that we have as science teachers and online teachers is experiments. How do you do chemistry with students when you don't have chemicals? How do I do physics when I don't have equipment? I mean, I have equipment. I own, you know, small equipment and whatnot, but I can't buy chemicals and ship them to students' houses on Kauai because they're corrosive and all of this kind of stuff. Your hands are kind of tied, so we figured out our ways around it.
So I taught chemistry, or I'm still teaching chemistry, and again, the challenge is, how do you do chemistry labs? Chemistry requires some chemicals, right? So we do a lot of kitchen labs for our class, and so one of the things that I have students do is at-home labs, meaning they can conduct the labs at home. Of course, first thing you want to do is survey your kids and ask, hey, do you have these materials? And most of the materials that I use for my class are the ones you can found at home, and they're recyclable or something you can just throw away. For example, one example is that we did an acid and base lab, and so acids and base, acids are of course corrosive as well as bases. So instead of using chemicals, what we did was we just bought, or the student in particular, just boiled some red cabbage, and that's what she used for her indicator. She grabbed some regular liquid that you can find at home, like soap, wine, Coke, things like that, and she tested which is an acid and which is a base. You can do stuff like that at home. Another, so I'm going to show you. So this is a student work. This is her work. This is an actual lab report that the student produced. So if you notice, it follows the scientific methods. She has tables in there, and of course her data. Okay, so this is all done at home using kitchen materials. Another thing that we did in class for camp was the solar oven. We did this last year where the students constructed a solar oven using, let's say, pizza boxes or whatever box they could find, aluminum foil, and of course they need the sun. And Oahu had a lot of rain that time, so we kept extending that lab, but eventually the student, she was able to cook some hot dogs. She cooked some, what is that,
Looks like a
quesadilla?
quesadilla.
Yeah. So, these are at-home labs that the kids can do, and elementary kids can do it as well. All you have to do is, you know, um, ask the parents to collect some materials, and parents can actually help, produce the labs at home.
So this video doesn't work. We're gonna have to go to YouTube real quick.
Yeah, another thing, if a student when I survey my kids and I ask them, do you have this material? And if some of them say they don't have it, what I do is I offer an alternative lab for them. It'll be the same lab that they could do at home, but then I'll do it at home and I'll record it. And so, again, I don't have a lot of time. I use the iPad a lot. This is iPad 2. It doesn't have the greatest video quality, but it works. I take all my labs on iPad. I download it to iMovie.
Okay, class, we're going to be doing a lab today on what is called the percentage of water in popcorn. Now, in front of you is a list of our materials. For
Yeah, so this is sample. So what I normally do is I'll start off with materials and then I'll proceed to the lab and then the kids will follow. Like they actually have to extract the materials procedure and whatnot. So nothing is really given to them. The only thing that's given to them is a blank template and they have to do everything just by watching the video.
Cool. I realized, actually, I'm sorry, in my introduction, I have the word humble written at the very bottom, and I forgot to do a talking point on that. I want to kind of let you know that these are our solutions that we came up with. It's not the end all says all. We don't have all of the answers for online teaching. These are just kind of the techniques that we've learned, and so we wanted to pass that on to you. But I'm sure that in next year I'm going to change it all up and improve it, and then the next year it's going to change and change and change. So this is kind of our ongoing process. But here's what I'm kind of faced with as a physics teacher. This is really cool, I think. This is I don't have this. I used to have this when I was teaching upward bound up in Berkeley, but I don't have this. This is a motion detector, one of those cool lab equipments. And even if I did have this, my students don't have it. They also don't have this, which is like an air tract for physics. But what I do know that they do for a fact is they have a computer. Why? Because we've given them a computer. And I also know that they have a camera phone. Hopefully they have a cooler one than that camera phone. But they have some kind of camera that they can capture this. But from that, what I've found is, as a physics teacher, I used to teach at the community college, at the high school where we had a lab. I can do things online, which to me, I really enjoy, and I think it's much more engaging to me than using all of this lab equipment. And let me show you what I do, because to me it's really exciting. I make the students use their phones or use their cameras and whatnot and take videos of things in their life. And then I take that and my philosophy is your life, your videos is my classroom. My laboratory is going to be your world. And what I mean by that is, here, I'll show you an example. I took a video last night, of me playing ball with my son.
Ready? Nice job.
Okay, so I took that video on the phone, and then what I did was I said, okay, I'm going to put it into this free program called Tracker. And that's my big thing. I'm cheap. And so I like free things. I like things that everyone has access to. I don't want to make a student pay for anything. I don't want to make a teacher pay for anything. So I use this free program called Tracker. They have a lot of good paid programs, but you can play the video, and yes, that's interesting. But what you can also do is I can add a little coordinate system. I can add a little calibration, and I can even have the program track that ball. And then I can take the data that it gives me and copy and paste it and put it into Excel. And then boom, I've done all of the stuff that I used to have motion detectors and all of these kinds of things. I did it for free using a camera and a computer software that anyone can download. And to me that's really exciting. So I spit out the data and I create a little graph from that. There, I've done what these big labs can do. And I guess one of the things I'm looking at is if you work at a school, most of you probably work at a school that I'll probably be jealous with the lab equipment you have access to, because we don't have much. And so what I'm kind of showing you is we're not showing you this so that you can replace all of this big lab equipment, because you have it. You have access to it. But I think what we're kind of showing you is you can have students do things at home and bring that back so that you can start using your class time more efficiently and just have that opportunity to do a discussion. So like here's another thing that I do, which is similar to the way Maria does it, is I took a video.
All right, so one way that
And what I wanted to do was, you know, that physics war is I was trying to have them calculate how fast that cannonball leaves the cannon. And so we shot that thing up in the air, pop, and then it landed back in the barrel. And it took like 150 tries. But anyway, we did it. And it shot all the way up and it landed back in the barrel. And you can time that. And I actually have just YouTube and a stopwatch. Or I tell the students, take out a stopwatch, watch this YouTube video, click, 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 and put in your data. And then the students go and they make a Google Doc, and they take that Google Doc and they get to interact and work with the other students and put in their data, as well as the other students get to put in their data, and then we get to, as a class, come up with the best velocity for this thing. So there's some pretty exciting moments in here. I don't, well, I want to share with you one because I got really excited when we actually got it to work.
Oh, that was so close. Where'd it go?
Yeah, I was excited. It was really tough. That was like the 150th try. So we're going to talk about teaching strategies, and these are the things that we've used in our classrooms and how we've gone about addressing certain challenges. Hopefully these are tools you can use in your classroom.
So again, last year was my first year. I didn't know anything about WebEx or live classes. All I knew was that I had to teach a class online, and I was like, how do you do that? So, anyways, so last year we were actually we only maybe did one class a week, one live class a week, and that was good enough, right? So I had one live class, and I thought, that's not enough. I like to talk. I like to, talk more and less assignments. So that means I don't have to grade lots of papers, right? I can just ask questions, ask the student, hey, do you know this? Then I can determine if that student is actually learning. So what happened was I started making video tutorials, almost like the Khan Academy video tutorials, but it was geared towards me. Like, because, Khan Academy is good, it's a great resource, but, if I tell my students to, hey, go look at this Khan Academy video, they'll still come to me and say, I don't understand it. So I thought it's better if I create my own videos because then, they're familiar with me. So there's a bunch of apps that I used on the iPad. Again, I used the iPad a lot. So the first one I used a lot was what do you call Educreation? Are you guys familiar with that program? Educreation. Here's an example. It's a free app that you can download on your iPad. So what it is, it's an online whiteboard, and all you have to do is actually talk, and it'll record everything you do on the whiteboard. And then it saves it. And then once it's saved, you can actually embed it into if you have a class site or whatever, or you can actually share a link to the video through the email so that your students have access to it. So it's almost like a Khan Academy video, but it's created by you and it's free. So here's an example of what it looks like. You know what you could do? If you go on their website, you can actually type a subject that you're looking for, and guarantee there's going to be an education video on that particular subject. So if you are pressed for time and you need some simple explanation for something, you can check out Educreation because there's actually a lot of people that do videos for this particular website. Another one is Doceri. So this is the Educreation. This is all mine. I created a lot of videos. So all you have to do is, you just create new lessons, and a blank lesson looks like this. Then you just record. Then the other one I used is a paid app. It's called Doceri.
This is a tutorial on how to find molecular formula. So the molecular formula is the actual formula of. Then for hydrogen, you do the same thing. You just take 7.78 grams, divide by the molar mass of hydrogen, which is 1.01 grams per mole. The grams cancel, and you're actually left with 7.70 mole. Okay, so now we're going to look for the ratio here. And to get the ratio, we pick the smallest number of moles, which is 7.6.
So if you don't have, time, let's say school day is over, because our kids can access the school anytime, anywhere. If the school day is over and you're not available for help, then they can just access the video and they're able to view them. And you know what? For like elementary kids, it's a really good tool that they could use, just to mess around and hear their voice. It really helps them, you know, um, learn. I know of, because I used to work with school agers, and just to give them a regular whiteboard with a marker and have them like doodle or do their addition or subtraction, they get excited over it. So, you guys have, if you have that luxury of an iPad or something, they could use these apps. Go ahead.
You know what? One of the things that when I went to a face-to-face, back to a face-to-face environment that really helped me is in an online school, we archive pretty much everything. The philosophy of the school is students can access their classroom anytime, any place, as long as they have internet connection and a computer. So we've been asked to archive our lectures, archive our question and answer times, and make it available for the students to watch. And I found that this is really helpful to when teaching, even in a face-to-face environment. I'll record my class and my conversation with them, and I'll record everything. I don't want to just record just the little bits of me teaching. I'm going to record the questions and then the parts where I make mistakes, and then the thinking that goes on, because to me that's all a part of the learning. So we use a bunch of different techniques. One is called WebEx, and it's recorded straight into there. Another one I like to use is called Snagit. Snagit's a paid program, but I got mine, I think it's like for 50 bucks. I got mine for like 15 because you get it on like, oh, hey, I'm a teacher and I get this discount and this discount. So you can get it for pretty cheap. In fact, we're actually recording this presentation right now. And actually, with that said, since we're recording, I actually need to apologize. I realized something, because I know that at some point my wife will probably ask me, well, how did your presentation go? And then she'll ask, because she knows I recorded it, she'll ask, well, can I see it? And in my wife's defense, my suit is wrinkly because I slept on the bus. She had a nice and pressed for me this morning, so I just wanted to make sure that she knows that, when you watch this later on, you don't get angry at me. We also have, I use Google Hangouts. I use, from Google Hangouts, you can actually record straight into YouTube. And I think that that's a really good tool as a face-to-face teacher, is recording everything all of these interactions that you have. And then make it available to the students. So that way the students don't need to take notes furiously. They know they can just go back and get whatever they need at any time. This is the thing that really excites me, and I know that this might seem like a daunting part. This is where I got into programming. And here's what I think is really excites me about teaching physics, is I've been teaching my students how to program arcade games, like how to build their own Angry Birds app. And I have my reason for it, and I'd like to share it with you. I use a lot of simulations sometimes. Have you ever heard of this program this group called PHET? Has anyone used that before? They're a science program, and they make all these online simulations. And simulations are good. I like them. I use PHET a lot for my 8th grade science and whatnot. But I guess to me, simulations is kind of like a graphing calculator. You don't really know how it works. You don't really know how it was built. You just kind of use it. And that's cool, but to me, it doesn't really, it's like this black box of mystery. So I'm going to show you guys how I do the programming, and I'm going to kind of just go over it as quickly as, as relevantly as possible, and then also let you know that I only started learning it this summer, and I implemented it this year. So instead of using a bunch of simulations, I teach my students to program using a programming language called Python, and there's another thing called VPython. And this is all in the resources that we've given you earlier. So let me show you what it does. Now, I've been told that I'm not supposed to switch in and out of presentation or out of Windows, so because it breaks your concentration. So make sure you concentrate, because I just switched out of a window. I'm sorry. Programming could be really easy. Like, for example, let me just show it to you real quickly. I'm going to program something. From Visual, import box. I'm going to tell the computer, okay, run that. And the computer is going to say, I'm not going to respond to you because you're doing a presentation and this is when you would want me to respond. Wait for it. Come on, computer. This is probably why you didn't want me to switch out of the program. So it created a box for me. And you're like, wow, that's not impressive at all. Actually, it is. See, it's an actual box. I created a 3D box that I can move around. If you can't see that, let me zoom in on that. And it didn't take much. All I did was box. So I can even have second graders do it. I have my second grader do this kind of programming. But I can add a little bit more sophistication to the programming, and that might look like, a lot, but that's not that much, but look what you can get from that. Now I got a ball that's moving. And all of those commands, I just told it, and it was just this much right here. So it's only a few commands and whatnot. But what really excites me about programming is that what I can have my students do is I'll build a more complicated program like this. And I have my students building this, and I teach them how to do that throughout the year. But what you can do is you can run this. Let me show you what this one looks like. Wait 1 second. Sorry, there we go. I don't know if you saw that. It was let me zoom in. It was a ball being shot out of being shot, and there's the little path that it took. But I can take that data from there and throw it into Excel, and from that, I can compare it to that. Remember that ball that I threw at my son? That red line is that data that I showed you on Tracker, when we graphed it earlier. But the blue line is actually what I programmed. And so this is where I get to open up conversations with my students to say, look how they match up. And then they're going to say, well, wait a second, they don't match up. Oh, I say, well, yeah, it's close, but why don't they match up? And so now I can have my students ask these students, well, how do I get it even closer? How do I interact with it even more? And well, I guess the reason why they don't match up, does anyone have a guess why the blue line is different from the red line? Anyone? I feel like that video that she showed, right? Anyone? Oh. No. It's why is the red line smaller than the blue line? I'll give you the answer. Ooh, I did it. All right. It's air resistance. Right? Because air resistance, in the real world, we have air resistance. The blue line has no air resistance because it's a computer program that we use Newton's laws to build it off of. And in order to teach my students air resistance, oh my goodness, I'm a graduate student at UH in physics, and I think that I have the math background to be able to do air resistance. But what really excites me is with programming, I can add 3 lines and show my students, okay, this is how you would emulate air resistance. This is how a computer could handle it. And when I added air resistance, this is what I got. And it only took a few steps. And so it allows my students to start asking me, well, why doesn't this match up? Why aren't these things close? And I'll say, well, that's what physics is. Physics is figuring out what the mathematics are that match up with what we see in the real world. And this is my springboard for talking about science. I try not to just shove it down their throats to begin with. I'll introduce them to things and then let them see the discrepancies, and then have that as my opportunity to start talking about uh, physics and science and that kind of stuff, and mathematics. And that's what really excites me about that. And the last one I like using is Google Docs. I'm sure everyone's seen Google Docs, but if you haven't, it's a really great program to use. I like to use it, and I like to use it in a slightly different way. So I gave my students their physics instructions. I make them derive all the equations. But when I do that, what I do is they're going through, and this is some of the text that I wrote for them, and I have a drawing inside of there. And I'll ask them, well, how can we figure out how much area is underneath this red line? And so I'll open up the drawing and I'll start messing with it. But what's really cool is with my students who are on Big Island and Kauai can also open up the drawing and they can mess with it as well. And we can interact. So I'm going to start messing with the square over here, and I have a student changing the triangle at the exact same time. And they're on the Big Island right now. It's almost like having the ability to have all your students go up to the whiteboard and collaborate without having them literally on top of each other trying to collaborate on the whiteboard. So it's like calling your entire class up to the whiteboard and saying, let's play with this together and figure it out. And that's how I like using the Google Doc. And that's built right into my textbook. So that's something that I find pretty exciting. But anyway, that's our workshop. I'd love to make sure that we open it up for questions, because to me that's where you get the real meat of the, that's where you can get some real good tools. I'm going to leave it up on this slide over here. Again, we're with Myron B. Thompson Academy, and if you take a picture of this QR code, it will get you to all of the resources that we did. I will make sure to put up the video that we just took for our presentation. So if you want to share it with anybody else, then you can do that as well. But any questions? Can I ask? You're from Lalehua and you're elementary. What else do you? Since we have the ability to, where's everybody else from, and what do you guys teach? I'm just curious. Okay. Oh, okay, cool. Oh. Okay.
I'm from Honolulu Community College with the Construction Academy. So we go out to the high schools and give students the opportunity to learn about construction trades and what the careers, availability of careers and things like that.
You said HCC?
Honolulu Community College.
Very cool. I just worked with them 2 years ago. Spent the whole summer with them. It was exciting. I'm sorry. Oh, very cool. But, well, a lot of these things that I showed you were for high school, well, what I do with physics in high school, but I think that you can take a lot of those videos and programs and whatnot and use them in your classroom, and hopefully that was helpful to you. So if you didn't take a picture of the QR code, I actually have a few, I don't know, they're not business cards, they're just pieces of paper that I cut up with the QR code on them, and you can have it there. But that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for coming.